My name is Alex Watson. I'm going to be doing my sheep brain dissection. I have it here on my tray and I have the brain. And now I'm going to be moving the camera so that you can see the dissection a bit better. Okay, so starting off, in order to label a few structures here, the first thing I'm going to point out is right here we have the optic chasm, and that is where the information that we receive from our eyes, the visual information, comes through and it crosses to the contralateral side of the brain, which is where it is then processed. The next thing I'm going to point out is the optic nerves, which are right here and here. The optic nerves carries and transmits information from the retina to the brain. I am going to point out, it's a little hard to see on my brain, but the olfactory bulb, which is right here, and the olfactory bulbs receive sensory information about smells and odors from our nose. And then following the olfactory bulb, we have the olfactory tract. And the olfactory tract connects the olfactory bulbs to the cerebral cortex for further processing of the information that we got from the olfactory bulbs. The next thing that I forgot to mention about the optic chasm and nerves is we have the optic tract right here, and the optic tract carries our information that we receive from the retinas through the optic chasm then to the occipital lobe for further processing. Now, if we put the brain here, you can see the gyrus and the sulci. Sulcus, well, sulcus is singular. So the gyrus and the sulci, and these two things help increase the surface area of the brain, and by the benefit of increasing the surface area of the brain allows for more packed neurons, which then allows for more processing of more information. Okay, the next structures that I'm going to point out are the lobes of the brain. So here we have our frontal lobe, which is important for, and you can also see our olfactory bulbs up here as well. But here, the frontal lobe, which is important for voluntary movement and high-level functions and high-level functioning, such as, you know, like our everyday planning, our organization, our self-control, things like that. And then next, we have the parietal lobe, which is just behind the frontal lobe. So here is our parietal lobe. And the parietal lobe processes our body temperature, taste, and touch and movement. And touch includes where the movement is, the pressure of the movement, like the depth of the movement, and things like that. Next, we have our temporal lobe, which is here. And our temporal lobe is responsible for processing any auditory information and also is responsible for our memory. And then back here, we have our occipital lobe, and the occipital lobe is primarily responsible for processing all of our visual information. So next I am going to be doing a sagittal cut of the brain with my scalpel. And then I'm going to take my scissors to kind of come through here and get a clean, well, I guess actually you can see it pretty well, so I am going to leave it open to point to some of the structures. So here we have our cerebellum, and this receives sensory information and is also responsible for the regulation of our voluntary motor movements. And within regulation of our voluntary motor movements, it also will coordinate timing and things like that of those movements. Here, I'm going to bring this closer so you can see, is the, and I apologize if I pronounce this wrong, the arbor vitae, and that is made up of white matter, and it kind of looks like a tree, given the name arbor. And this is responsible for bringing sensory and motor information in and out, to and from the cerebellum. Here we have the spinal cord, and obviously not the entire spinal cord, but right here we have the spinal cord, and the spinal cord carries information to and from the brain and to the rest of the body. So it is responsible for carrying all of those sensory neurons, those motor neurons. The brain is responsible for sending the sensory neurons down, and then motor neurons and all of that. And then next, if we look in here, let me see which way has kind of the best view of it. Okay, so you can see right here is the corpus callosum, and this ensures that communication is able, and then it gives the ability to send signals between our two hemispheres of the brain. So that allows that. Next, I'll show you, we have our brain stem right here. And the brain stem has the medulla right here, and I apologize, the brainstem takes part in regulation of the heart rate, breathing, sleeping, and eating. And then the medulla, which is about right there, it's a bit difficult to see on mine. The medulla is the control center for the function of the heart and the lungs. This here, which is the medulla, is part of the brainstem. It regulates breathing, sneezing, and swallowing. Next up, another piece of the brainstem is the pons, which is right about here. And the pons is involved in the rhythm of our breathing and other respiratory functions. And it also is noted that it does have a function in REM sleep. Okay, next I'm looking to find the pineal gland, which I believe is right here, if we can see it. I'll bring it up. And the pineal gland, it secretes melatonin, and melatonin has to do with our wakefulness and arousal. Just below the pineal gland here, we have the thalamus, and the thalamus is responsible for relaying sensory and motor signals to the cerebral cortex. It also takes part in regulating sleep, alertness, and wakefulness. Just below the thalamus, we have the hypothalamus right here, and you can see it a bit better on this side. Right here, the hypothalamus releases very important hormones for our body. It regulates the body temperature, it regulates emotional response, it regulates our appetite, it regulates our sex drive, and so the hypothalamus is very, very important in all of that. And I believe with all of that, those are all of my structures of my sheep brain. And, sorry, I'm a bit. Okay, here I am, and that is my sheep brain. I'm Alex Watson. Thank you so much.